Good morning. Welcome, everyone. We will get started. Thank you all so much for coming to the Fresno County Department of Behavioral Health Health and Wellness Center for this exciting event to really kick off and announce a collaborative effort in our community. My name is Susan Holt, and I'm currently serving as the Interim Director of Behavioral Health for Fresno County. Again, my pleasure to welcome you here today. One of the guiding principles for the Department of Behavioral Health, and I really think this is true for our whole community, is that we are committed to becoming a more trauma-informed and trauma-responsive care delivery system and community. Today, the program that we'll be highlighting for you is a cross-sector partnership and collaborative really to that end, to support youth and families who experience traumatic events or critical life stressors. And the way that we're approaching this is through an innovations project. The voters of California quite some time ago passed the Mental Health Services Act. And within that legislation is a small little bucket of funding, if you will, called innovations funding. This allows county behavioral health departments like ours to test new strategies to support our community and build on practices to inform evidence-supported practices of the future. So that is why we're here today, and it is my pleasure to introduce the chairman of our Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Brian Pacheco. Please join me in welcoming him.
Yes, stay right here. Thank you, Susan. As she said, I'm Brian Pacheco, Chairman of the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. It's my pleasure today to welcome all of you for attending, especially our collaborating partners from the Fresno Police Department, Fresno Unified, Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, UC Davis, and BrainWise Solutions. Our Department of Behavioral Health is anxious to roll out this pilot program and laid the groundwork from the program formation to the funding. This will help our youngest residents and their families in learning to deal and navigate with traumatic experiences. Along with the pandemic, our community has seen rising levels of violence, tragedy, and trauma. This program, Handle with Care Plus, offers children 4 to 11 years old and their families faster access to trauma services through their schools. Schools targeted in the pilot are Heaton, Del Mar, Pyle, and Lowell Elementary Schools. I would especially like to also thank members of the Fresno Police Department's chaplaincy program for its work to identify high volumes of trauma for children at these 4 schools. The program identifies affected students to handle them with care by offering extra attention to the behaviors sooner following a tragic event. Another component of the program is including the children's families in the process through parent cafes, so family members can have the tools to help them all recover together. The county couldn't do this work without our collaboration of our great community partners, and I'd like to thank you all for being here. Joining us next is Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, Jim Jovino, to discuss his department's role in this endeavor. Jim.
And thank you, Supervisor Pacheco and Interim Director Susan. We just really appreciate you, our partnership that we've had with you and DeJuan, but really with the Behavioral Health Department. So I want to start with just good morning, everyone. You know, there is nothing more important in this community than our children. And I'm going to repeat it, nothing more important than our children. Partnerships like this absolutely make a difference in schools. You know, every day children come to school and we have no idea of the trauma that they have suffered that night or that weekend. And they walk into a classroom to a caring adult, a teacher who, frankly, they just do not get enough credit for what they do every day. You know, that classroom is supposed to be an academic environment for success, but what happens many times, unfortunately, is what happened the night before really changes the outcome of that day for that child in that classroom. We have been in this amazing partnership with the County of Fresno and our behavioral health department called All For Youth. As many of you know, All For Youth is in year 4 of a 5-year build-out of putting a mental health clinician in every school in Fresno County, and that's every school. You know, we're currently in year 4, we're in over 200 schools, and we will be in 300 schools by the end of year 5. Having staff there is one thing, but if you don't know what's going on in the life of a child or what happened the night before, then how do you help? This is why I'm so excited to be partnering with, again, our public health folks, but also with our police chief and the Resiliency program and the chaplaincy program, all of the things that we have grown to love in our community to help us so that when that child shows up, they will be identified and our folks in our campuses will know. You know, there are school psychologists, we have nurses, we have all these tremendous supports in schools, and this is going to be one more step that'll help us. I want to end with this. You know, partnerships in our community in Fresno County are uniquely different than the rest of the state of California. I can tell you that because as an elected county superintendent, there are 58 of us in the state. And when we talk about what we're doing in Fresno, do you know the question they always ask is how and why? How did you do this? And we do it because, look, there's nothing more important than us working together. And we all know that. You know, Chief has a tremendous job that he does and the work that he does every day, you know, and he sees one end of it. You know, my goal would be so that the chief doesn't have to deal with those kind of crimes in our valley anymore, that we can help our children so they can be resilient and resourceful. So with that, I want to introduce someone who I will immediately become my next best friend, Rodney. I'm sure you will be. But Rodney Lowry is the executive director of the Resiliency Center and the chaplaincy program in Fresno County. And God bless you, Rodney, and thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. That hesitation wasn't for an applause. It was finding my wife's eyeglasses here. I've reached that age, unfortunately. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rod Lowry. I'm director of the Fresno Resiliency Center. Allow me to read a quote from the American Psychological Association. It says, "Most children and adolescents with traumatic exposure, trauma-related psychological symptoms are not identified and consequently do not receive the help. Even those who are identified as in need of help frequently do not obtain any services." Pediatrician and California Surgeon General Nadine Burke-Harris explains how the pandemic is a massive stressor for our children. There are an estimated 140,000 children who lost a caregiver, such as a family member or parent, in the past 2 years. Since 2019, there's been a rise in suicide attempts among people younger than age 18. Now consider this. Imagine a new paradigm in handling these calls and working alongside key partners to address the hurdle that the APA has told us and promote a healing, hope, and public safety reform through a lens of opportunity instead of liability. And what I'm speaking about this morning is the partnership with the Fresno Police Department and our other partners here, where we look at calls for service that come through the Fresno Police Department. Each child impacted by a trauma picks up the phone, their parent picks up the phone and calls 911. Everyone hurting in this city reaches to the Fresno Police Department for that first request for help. This partnership allows us to share data to get these children and their families the hope and help that they need. So from here, I'm going to pass this off to my chief, who's graciously allowed us to share that data and begin to police and respond to the needs of our community in truly an innovative way. And again, Chief, I appreciate that. Chief Paco
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you for being here. Just a couple of comments on this program. About a year ago, I had a meeting with Rod Lowry over at the Resiliency Center, and I was learning about all the programs that were being offered here in Fresno. And then he gave me this presentation about Handle with Care. And as I was watching the presentation, I kind of smiled, and I'm sure Rodney kind of thought to himself, why is he laughing? You know, why is he smiling? And the truth of the matter is I'm very familiar with this program because I helped implement it in the state of Oklahoma. The Oklahoma City Police Department was the very first agency to bring Handle with Care to the region. I've been to the conferences in West Virginia, and I know that this works. So let me tell you a story of why I believe in this program. We had an incident in Oklahoma City where 5 young children saw their mother be murdered in front of them. Graphic, terrible situation. The very next day, those 5 kids were at school, and nobody knew what happened to them. They were expected to perform, they were expected to listen, they were expected to learn, and they had just watched their mother be murdered in front of their eyes. That should never happen in our community. As police officers, we have a front row seat to the trauma that our kids experience in this community. I can tell you that we receive about almost 1 million 911 calls in the Fresno PD Communications Center. We respond to a little bit over half of those. Okay, every month we get 650 new cases of domestic violence. Half of those involve children who witnessed the crime. We also receive about 50 sexual assault cases every month, with 60% of the victims being children. This is happening in our community every single day, and we have to have an avenue to address these problems. We have to care. We have to be trauma-informed. We have to be trauma-involved. We got to have services, professionals that know how to deal with the struggles that our children are dealing with. Children are resilient, and they can bounce back with proper help and support, but we got to give that to them. We have to make the connection. And my police officers are able to get out there every single day, and they see what's going on, whether it's a horrible traffic accident that a child witnessed, whether they're the victim of the crime, whether they see their parent go to jail, which is a traumatic situation for them. We should be able to make that notification through the app now, Handle with Care Plus, and instantly notify the Resiliency Center, who will then connect them to services the very next day. That is the goal. The other thing I know about children is not only are they resilient, but this trauma, you know, if they can receive the services, they can bounce back. But if they don't receive care for this trauma, what happens to them? Their life changes completely. And we know what the statistics show, that many of them become involved in the criminal justice system. They become involved in drugs. They go to prison. They don't finish high school. They don't finish their education, and their lives are broken. If we give them the right help through this partnership, they can become more resilient than ever and become a success. So thank you very much, Rod. I appreciate you taking this on. He made my job a lot easier because I certainly didn't want to start from scratch, but this is a program that I fully support. I've seen it work in other places very successfully, and I know that it's going to work here in Fresno to help our kids. So thank you. I'd like to ask Susan to come back up.
You might have to give me a second. That got me a little choked up. We are a resilient community, and we are investing in strategies to learn how to strengthen that resilience even more. And I'm so grateful that all of you could join us today to kick off and celebrate this incredible project in partnership with everyone you see here and others. So please join me in a huge round of applause for the children and families of Fresno County who will benefit from this project. And thank you again for joining us today. All of our partners will stay if there might be any other questions or if folks might ask for additional details. Again, we'll hang around for a while, and thank you again for being here.